Welcome. Thank you to everyone that's joined us today. I'm Heather Harmon. I head up marketing here at Rev1 Ventures. If you're not familiar with Rev1 Ventures, we are an investor startup studio. What that means is that we combine capital. Oh, sorry for that background noise. We combine capital and strategic services to help startups grow and corporates innovate. And as a part of that, we want to offer these community webinars to help educate entrepreneurs. So a couple housekeeping items. One, this is being recorded and we will send out the recording afterwards. So look out for that. Second, we will be taking questions all throughout this. So there, down at the bottom of your screen, there should be a black bar that has Q&A. And if you type into there your question, all of the panelists will see it. And we will also be taking questions via chat. So if you don't want to put it into the Q&A section, you can also just chat me and I will ask that question. This is actually the first time in my tenure that we've received questions in advance. So I'm really looking forward to making this very interactive and hope that you will continue to ask questions throughout. So thank you all for joining again, and thank you to our awesome panelists. We've got Matt Schachter, Heather Whaling, and Manny Larcher. Thank you for joining. I'm going to ask you to give us some background on yourself, your business, your area of expertise, and let's start with Heather.
Great, thanks so much. So my name is Heather Whaling. I am the founder and CEO of Gebben Communication. We are a communications agency based here in Columbus. I've got about 27 people on the team. Our clients are this really interesting mix of everything from startups and emerging brands all the way up to Fortune 200 companies. Probably about a third of our work is with early stage, growth stage companies. So hopefully we'll have lots of helpful information that we can share from what we've been learning with them, especially during COVID. Our clients are split equally between B2B and B2C, and our services are everything from traditional PR and media relations is a lot of our bread and butter type work, but then we also do content marketing and community management and paid search and social and SEO strategy and audit. So really everything you would need to help you accelerate growth through smarter communication is where we try to focus.
Thank you. All right, let's go to you, Manny.
Thank you, and I hope everyone is well. I'm Manny Larcher. I'm the CEO and founder of Stopwatch Creative. We are a startup studio. We focus on growth marketing and branding. We work with clients as well, also from idea to first customers, as well as Fortune 100. Our best story is a local client that we met at Rev1. He had a software company, and within a year, it started with us helping him with the new logo. And within a year, he actually grew his company and was acquired by another company here in Ohio, Proteon Software and Dark Rhino Security. So we are in year 3. I also am the founder of Collaborate and Elevate, which is a tool to help accelerate entrepreneurs and aspiring business owners. Thank you.
Great. Okay, last but not least, Matt.
Thanks, Heather. I'm Matt Schachter. I'm founder and fractional CMO of Strategic CMO. Strategic CMO is a fractional CMO service where I help startups, growth stage companies build and execute repeatable, scalable marketing strategies focused on growth. And my background was I was part of T-Pro Solutions. I ran marketing there, which was a Rev1 startup that exited in 2019. And so an opportunity to take those skills and that experience and help other entrepreneurs kind of navigate that chasm between, I need a full-time marketing executive and I don't need one. And so how I can build, not just, what you should do and why you should do it and that strategy, but, not have to go someplace else to have someone execute it.
Thanks, Matt. And for those of you in the audience that are entrepreneurs and are clients of Rev1, all of these organizations are ones that you can be a part of through our Veta Serves Provider program. So keep that in mind. We picked the best of the best. Okay, so Manny, you were telling a really great story about how you helped a startup from brand concept through exit. Can you talk about some examples of other startups that you've helped with their marketing and give us some examples? We'll go around the room again, but I'm going to start with you, Manny, since you already did it once.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. So, I think we work with a lot of, like if you're a personal trainer and you want to scale your time, roll out different services, we work with a lot of teachers right now that want to start selling courses online. So, building out different platforms that you could use, for example, Teachable. There are a lot of different things that you could use. So, I think we have a lot of success kind of working with that. I think, the first thing that came to mind was Rev1, Ardina. That's a telehealth company that, we helped kind of conceptualize and back into 2015. So, those are a few other examples. Our website is pretty up to date too, stopwatchcreative.com, with different examples. I could, kind of go down the list. I think one that I'm really proud about was the Wave Innovation Center. Michael Red, working with him, and he had an idea of opening up a co-working office, which we essentially conceptualized to the Wave Innovation Center, and it was open up for a year on Fifth Avenue on campus. And, we had several OSU students that have now graduated and started their own companies. One's doing a documentary with Eddie George right now. So that was a super rewarding experience. Unfortunately, Corona. That's, that doesn't happen anymore, but that was really fun. There are a few other successes as well that I've, with Columbus, there's a company right now going through sea change, that we connected them through, and, keep my fingers crossed, but hopefully they get a little grant here in the next couple weeks. So I think it's just all about identifying, what your goal is. And, my job is to put you in the best position to get, an ROI pretty quick at the end of the day. So on your time. So yeah, that's the gist of it.
Love it. Those are good stories. Matt, we have a request for you to talk about T-Pro.
Yeah,
as your example.
Yeah, so T-Pro is the most concrete example. So T-Pro was a B2B SaaS analytics startup, and that was founded in 2015. And when I interviewed with Terry Ziegler and Wayne Spencer and John Weller, the founders, Terry said to me, Matt, 3 to 5 years, that's it. That's the road. And 3 years and 1 month to the day that I was hired, we exited and were acquired by a complementary software provider. And so the experience there from a marketing side was, we had 3 industry experts. We marketed to consumer goods companies and people who, the 3 founders were people who came from that world. And it was really, how do we compete with the SAPs and the Oracles and these giant behemoth software companies with our 5-person startup. And it was really using that thought leadership and building their sort of credibility in the industry to become the educational leaders in that space. And so it was a lot of content marketing, it was a lot of messaging, and what started out as a very, let's try a bunch of things and see what works, became very strategic, and really focused on demand generation and understanding our customers' needs and building an account-based marketing sort of plan that really targeted. I mean, there's only, like in our target, there was only 3,000 companies. And so looking at that addressable market and saying, well, I'd like to get Procter & Gamble. That would be great, but they're going to take 2 years to close. But I can go get, a mid-sized CPG company, if we focus at that, I can get 5 of them because they'll close in 6 months. And so aligning the marketing with the sales funnel really created that sort of ability. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm working with 3 different SaaS companies currently. One, we're building an account-based program because it makes sense. There's not that many. One where they were building a content demand generation plan because they have more content than I've ever seen. And so like we're really trying to how you take that strategy to get those growth metrics.
Great. That's an excellent example. And I really enjoyed working with your team and Terry and Heather. There's some overlap between the team there as well. So if you want
There sure is. Yeah, we loved working with T-Pro too. So I can share some examples of some of the work that we're doing recently. A lot of it has been helping clients, basically everybody had to throw out their marketing plans in Q2 and figure out what do we do now. So one example of a company that we started working with is called Filty. They're also Midwestern based in Kansas City kind of area. And they were getting ready. They were probably about a month or so away from launching a nanofiber HVAC filter, and realized that what they were sitting on, the material and the science and technology that they were sitting on could be really valuable for people as we were thinking about a world of people wearing masks. So as they were figuring out the logistics and the operations and the production piece, we were brought in to lead the media relations and influencer relations efforts. So we had them on Business Insider and Good Housekeeping and Inc. And we've also secured a lot of Instagram and YouTube influencers. And then we're also working with them to really drill down into those sub communities. So people are buying a lot of masks on Etsy. So how can we really get involved with the Etsy maker community so that they're using, it's a insert for the filters. So we've been able to quickly help them build awareness through, a pretty big PR push, but more importantly, we're able to connect them, our PR goals, with their revenue goals and see that direct output of when we get media coverage or when we get influencers, we know that it's going to have a direct impact on sales. We're also working with like a marketing technology platform. It was on pace to be one of New York's next big unicorn type companies. Things were going really well. It's in the e-commerce, in the retail space. And obviously retail has taken a bit of a hit the last few months. And so we worked really quickly with them to evolve their communication strategy and focusing a lot on thought leadership around how consumers' buying habits are shifting and the importance of SMS and email and on the website, on-site marketing efforts, how that needs to evolve as consumer buying habits are changing now. And so we've got new data each week that we're able to share, which is really helpful for piquing national media interest. But then we're also looking at what are those long lead opportunities. So holiday shopping this year is going to be drastically different. What do retailers need to be doing now to prepare? We're also working with a startup out of Seattle that is, they were initially created to help connect parents with caregivers. And they were working on this pre-COVID. Obviously, that's become a whole other thing now in the midst of COVID. But they, as they saw that schools were not going to be reopening, took the technology that they had, and now they're connecting families with micro schools. And so working in different cities across the country, helping connect to help provide some learning options. So those are 3, I think, good examples right now of how we've been able to use PR really in a very specific targeted way to help them accomplish their business goals. And then certainly we're working with a range of local startups. So we work with 2 Labs, who was just in the Wall Street Journal with a big photo, which was very exciting. And then we've worked with Beam, we're working with Carely. We just started working with Smile MD. So it's a good mix of local companies that are trying to scale outside of this market and grow, as well as national companies who are just looking for really high quality media relations and communication strategies.
Great. And I really enjoyed reading your case study on your first example. So everyone sign up for their newsletter. It's really great information. So with that, I'm actually going to ask one of the questions that we received in advance of this. And let's see. So this question comes from Beth. She says, what are your favorite tools to measure your marketing analytics? Google Analytics is great, but how do you dive into the data to plan your next move, especially when we're having to be flexible what are ways that you can make sure that you're understanding the trends that are happening in your market and your constituents? Oh, looks like we lost Heather. So
I'm back. Sorry.
there she is. Okay, great. So let's start with you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the greatest question. And so a lot of, I mean, with me working with a lot of startups, like they're not investing in a lot of analytical tools, like, and so a lot of it is still manual. But I do think it's whatever channel you're using, those tools. So Google Analytics gets because everyone uses it, it kind of gets it's not that important. But I think, one of the things that I like to work with clients on is when you have, it's kind of what Heather was talking about, is when you have a marketing event, when you have a marketing catalyst, it's not like, if we didn't know marketing, what would happen, right? How many people would come to our website? How many people would do those things? But when you have a marketing event, you want to look at the lift that creates. And it's not enough to just be like, oh, look, how many people came to our website. You're looking at those conversion metrics. And I was working with a founder yesterday, and what I was trying to teach him was that it's the difference. It's the difference you create between where you were and where you are, and then where that next event happens. And so how it influences that. And so when I work with analytics, it's conversion metrics, it's looking at trend data, and it's unfortunately for a lot of my clients, it's very manual. Still, there are lots of great tools, and lots of great tools to measure that. I was working with someone at Terminus, which is an account-based marketing software that has amazing analytics on the other side. They do personalized ads, but the price tag is so high.
I can answer that one too. Even to Matt's point, like there's so many different tools out there, and some of it is very dependent on your industry and what CRM do you have and what integrates with that, and how is your website set up, and are you using Shopify, or is Google Analytics more important? So it varies so much. But I think even more important than the tools is building out a measurement framework. So for example, what we help our clients think about, like at the top of the framework, what is that one big goal that you're really trying to work towards? Then where in the customer journey can you influence decisions and buying, purchasing decisions, or moving them kind of through that sales funnel? So really understanding where in the customer journey you have the ability to influence, and then kind of building out from there. Then what are you going to measure to track if you're moving them through those journey stages? Then at each of those journeys, which are the metrics that actually align with that specifically? And so what we work with our clients on is thinking about it in terms of leading indicators and metrics. Because when you start, especially if you're an early stage company, you don't have 6 months to figure out if your marketing program is going to work. You also probably aren't going to see results in the first 2 weeks. So there needs to be a little bit of expectation management there. But you should have those leading indicators so that in that first month 1, month 2, you can know, are we at least tracking in the right direction? So that as we get into months 3, 6, 9, 12, are we going to hit some of those longer term metrics that you have to build towards? But I think having that measurement framework and getting buy-in from the founders and the other leaders, whoever's going to weigh in on it. Some investors want to weigh in on that, but getting everybody to align on what does success look like and how are we going to measure that, I think is more important than the tool. Once you know that, then you can figure out, okay, what are the tools that we need to actually be able to measure this? But that framework I think is really critical. And a lot of times startups just want to get to the marketing and they don't take that extra step to think about how are we going to know if this is actually working or not.
Yeah, I agree with that point 110%. So starting with your goals will help you understand what tools to use. So great point. Manny, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, Matt and Heather pretty much kind of covered everything there. To Matt's point, especially when you really, to do this well, it costs a lot. It costs a fair chunk of change. And when you add in AI, that is a whole other level that, I definitely don't think a lot of startups are. I guess quick, what they could, MySQL, I think everyone should be, thinking about SQL, and there's a lot of different tools. Look at Looker, which was just acquired by Google. What that does with data. There are a few different tools. But yeah, I think everything Heather said is pretty much verbatim. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think,
Well, thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Anything
I was
else?
just going to add to what both of you were saying in terms of, a lot of what I try and help people understand is that, especially in B2B with longer, messy sales cycles, it's what we're trying to measure is buyer intent. And so how does the action that you see indicate, their placement on the buyer's journey? But so like for them, it should lead them closer to being able to solve their problem. From an internal perspective, it should give us an idea of how much closer they're getting to a buying stage as opposed to a research stage or an attraction stage.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Okay, so one of the questions that we got from Jason is about growth hacking. Now, I'm not a super huge fan of that word, so I'm going to substitute it for marketing. So what are some of the latest growth hacks? What are growth hackers doing today? Is there still a forum or some private tools that marketers are using to come up with the next latest trends in marketing? Let's start with you, Manny.
Okay, well, they're all signing up for Collaborate and Elevate. It's $4.95 a month. And yeah, no, I think people are learning how to scrape websites. So if you have a company, if you have a developer, learn how to scrape the internet. You'll save a lot of money. You'll have, it's actually pretty simple, but you'll save a lot of money and a lot of time. And when it comes to leads, if you do it well and you have identified, what your product, the 4 P's of marketing are and where you're at, I think that would help. Obviously everyone's on social media, probably posting daily and in their stories daily. So I would, keep that going, but kind of to add in what Heather was saying earlier, it's all about what does that success look like? Is it working? I think email marketing is probably super underrated. So yeah, I think other than that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I can't think of any other things. Yeah.
Matt, you actually introduced me to a marketer's tool. Do you want to give a quick pitch to that and then maybe
What is it? Remind me what it is, and then I can give a quick pitch to that. Which one?
I think it's called Peak.
Oh, Peak. Yeah. So Peak is and I like is an incredible. So I got invited to this invite-only community, which is also, I think, a growth hack that is happening over and over. People creating communities. But I think creating a good community is really hard. It's not just like we created a space, now talk. What makes this one incredible is it's all marketing leaders that are together, but the people who run it are super engaged. So you join and it's $99, I think, for a year or something like that. And I'm always like super hesitant to do those things, but I knew the people who started it. So, and they engage you. So it's from the beginning, you are like, hey, Heather, what do you think about this? And so you're dragged into conversations. So that engagement is natural. And what's coming out of it is these individual conversations. Like I had a conversation with a personal branding person last night that I never thought in a million years I would have. And so it really is that, growth through networking, but not networking that essentially what they've done is created all their ideal customer profiles and shoved them in a community is what they really did. And it's been super effective in terms of even their own people doing business development without being salesy. I mean, that's really what happens. And one of the guys is one of the guys who runs Terminus. So that's he's constantly like, there's people on there that use it and that are selling his solution. And it's really powerful. And I think the other growth hacking sort of, and again, like I don't like that word because I think in terms of strategy, but it's really purposeful experiments, right? Like you're trying to get validated learning. Like growth hacking is not a sustainable way to build a business, but like the learning you get from doing those things is how you determine where you go from here.
Yeah, it's all about building those communities and getting that feedback from the people that would actually be using your product.
Yeah.
Heather, anything to add to that?
Not so much on the growth hacking piece. I mean, I think people have sort of covered that, but I think separate from the growth hacking, like what it's typically referred to or covers, I think there's also a lot of value in thinking about how do you take that like quick and iterative approach to other things. One of the things that we've had, I think, good success with testing on for startups is messaging. So you need to know what your narrative is and what that messaging is, but most startups also don't have the resources to focus group messaging and to test it. So we've been using paid social in replace of those Facebook groups. So having, keep everything else the same and then just change the messaging, and then you quickly can start to see which messages are actually resonating or driving higher quality traffic to the website and converting. And then you can take those messages and deploy them through your other channels, your other tools. So it's not technically like a growth hack strategy, but I do think it's a little bit of a kind of down and dirty way to think about how to get some really good intel that you can apply across the board to help you acquire better customers.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I love that idea. I'm gonna recommend that as well. So I'm gonna growth hack your idea.
There you go. Feel free.
Okay, so one of the other questions that I wanted to make sure that we got to was we're living in this virtual world. Some of you in your examples of the companies you're working with are talking about how to be really flexible in this new era, and communication now is more important than ever. So can you talk about some of the ways that you're helping advise your clients to connect in this virtual world? I'm gonna pick on Manny first because you already started talking.
Yeah, no problem. And I just got off the phone with, she might be in here. But we have a client that we specialize with working with a lot of like in-home healthcare franchises. So, a few months ago, just an idea of like adopting a platform where you could communicate with their families who are not in the city. You could upload pictures, they could see appointments, stuff like that. So we have fully kind of integrated or just helped that process and that messaging, which has really been really good for them. So that's kind of one example.
Yeah, that's a good example. Matt.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a shift to more personalized approach. Not so much talking about the product and the opening up those dialogues because of it. That customer acquisition is just important as customer retention is just as important as customer acquisition, and today as people are changing. And so really encouraging people to communicate via any channel with those people on a one-to-one. Like I have a client who is in the tech services space, and what he is finding is a lot of the people who are potentially prospects before are no longer employed there. And so you can't communicate in the same way. It has to be communicated in a way that is understanding of the situation that's going on. And from an outreach standpoint, that's so hard because you don't always know what's happening on the other side. And so it's really important to have people that are reaching out and knowing who you're reaching out to instead of those blanket sort of emails. I mean, Mandy said like emails is really effective. And in fact, open rates and all of those engagement rates are up, but you have to have something that resonates or you quickly get deleted. I saw that in someone's LinkedIn post today that people go through their inboxes looking for things to delete, not things to read. And so really focusing on that mentality is like, what value am I providing you? Why should I open that LinkedIn message? Why should I open that email?
That's a really excellent point. Heather, anything to add?
I think right now it's interesting because especially B2B companies, a lot of what they do is oftentimes built around trade show season and being able to go to the trade shows and meet with prospects, or, maybe you have somebody in your funnel and you can get them at that trade show and help move them along that process. And trade shows aren't happening this year, and who knows when they'll actually start happening again. So we're having a lot of conversations with clients right now about how do we reallocate those dollars away from, maybe you had it booked for trade shows, and how can you move those into PR, into paid search and social, into some other tactics where you can still get in front of the people that you need to get in front of. Especially if you're thinking about how do you replace that trade show piece, then thinking about what does a trade media relations push look like? What kind of like webinars or virtual events are they replacing the trade show with it? And how do you make sure that you're in those conversations and front and center and still top of mind? So I think that's a really important piece of, you know, the top of funnel efforts that maybe you used to get at some of those trade shows. Thinking about PR as a top of funnel driver can be a really effective way to sort of reallocate and shift over some of those dollars.
Great.
I've seen exactly what you're talking about. Like, how do you replace that in-person sort of interaction? And people are craving it because they do this all day. They sit on computers, or they're just, you know, on Zoom calls, and there's no interaction. And so I've seen people, and I've recommended to a couple of clients, switching like some of their content distribution. It's like previewing it like this, right? Like, I'm the founder of the company. I'm not just putting out a blog. Here's the 2-minute clip of what this, if you want to read the whole thing, go ahead and do it. But like, here it is, because now it's my face, and it's people to people as opposed to B2B.
I do also think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift. I think in kind of that March through June timeframe, everything was focused on COVID, right? It was almost impossible to get media coverage unless you somehow tied your story to COVID.
Yep.
Social media content all was around, what are we doing now in response to COVID? How is COVID impacting our hours, our distribution channels, our, you know, procurement, everything. And I think, you know, in July, and I think even now, the first couple weeks in August, it's starting to feel like brands are able to lift their heads up a little bit more and focus on non-COVID things. And we're having more conversations now with, instead of like, okay, let's talk about what the next month looks like. It's, what do the next 3 months look like? What do the next 6 months look like? Nobody's really talking about what do the next 12 months look like yet, because there's still so many variables. But I do think there now is a good time to start thinking about, what does Q4 look like? What do you need to be doing in Q3, Q4 to set yourself up for success in Q1? I think we've all been in this sort of everything is urgent and everything is important, and we're just trying to get through every day or every week. We have to sort of recalibrate our brains again to go back to like a little bit longer term thinking and longer term planning. And I do think now is the time to start having those conversations.
Yeah, I think you've all made excellent points. It's using new mediums to connect, but that personal connection is still really at the top of the list of how to move the needle. Okay, we're getting some great questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to ask the next one. This is from Anonymous. With big tech under scrutiny presently, I mean, we're talking the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, even TikTok, what advice, suggestions do you have for marketing efforts using social platforms that aren't embroiled in those controversies?
I mean, it's hard to find a social platform probably at this point who's not embroiled in one of those controversies, at least the larger platforms. I think, you know, we had a lot of brands who, you know, when there was sort of the boycotting of Facebook, we had a number of clients that we were working with that decided not to do the advertising on Facebook. And I think it really reinforces back to, I think, what Matt was saying earlier of, do you have those one-to-one opportunities? So can you shift some of that budget? Maybe you don't want to do the paid social on Facebook, but what are you doing on email? What does your SMS program look like? Can you be doing more virtual events? Right? We can't do like in-person events right now. So can you be doing more virtual events? You should be thinking about PR. There are plenty of other tactics. And I think we've all sort of gotten used to this like default of like Facebook's, it's easy, right? Like we can access basically everybody on it, on Instagram or wherever. And it's relatively easy to figure out how to get some good analytics out of it and really help connect. But certainly there are challenges that come with that. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to not sort of rest on the laurels of Facebook, and for us to challenge ourselves as marketers about where else are our people spending their time, and how else can we be getting in front of them and creating more of those touch points that will resonate with them and get them to convert, whatever that conversion looks like. But you know, the more you can own the data instead of having to rent access through Facebook or Instagram, the better.
Yeah, great. Does anyone else want to chime in? I think that was a really comprehensive answer, but
I think Heather, you're 100% right in terms of like what it has forced us to do is become more targeted, right? Like we can't rely on the Facebook to say we're going to reach as many people as possible. It's let's reach the best people as possible. And so looking at a couple of my clients have, especially in the tech space, have industry associations that are holding, virtual conversations all the time. How do we get to become, shift some of those dollars to be sponsors there? So not just so we can be the focus of the conversation, so we can listen really well. And then we can go back to them. And I think that's, one of the opportunities now is to shift to that, how do we listen, hear someone in an environment, and then go back to them on that one-to-one level and say, I heard you struggling with this, we think we might be able to help you.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And, as people are getting zoomed out, it was a term I heard that I love. How do you create those other connections in other areas where they are?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Manny.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to say, I do think people, in a way, we have gotten lazy when it comes to just advertising on Facebook. And then, I could argue and say that it's probably the worst traffic when you look on your Google Analytics. And then I could argue and say you have no idea if any customers are coming out of there. So some of my most successful clients, we've never created a Facebook or Instagram page for them. So I definitely think people need to start thinking about YouTube, podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, hitting people on different channels, and then also joining niche groups that help promote your product for low cost. I think that's the future. And the only reason I'm personally on Facebook is because I have an agency. So, that's the only reason. I would have cold turkeyed, the platform already.
Okay, so we've got another question that I really want to get to. We're a startup focused on B2B in the agricultural space and plan to try some Zoom technical sessions, thought leadership, learning sessions. They're going to tap into their LinkedIn network to attract viewers. What other channels do you recommend to attract viewers? Now, this is a great question. It's very specific to this particular industry, but I would like to kind of broaden that question and ask, how do you recommend any business understand which channels they should be looking into that fits their business? Because, agriculture is very specific, but the answer is always going to be, it depends on your business. So I want to make sure that we help answer this question in a broader perspective. So Manny, actually, I'm going to pick on you first.
Yeah, and to me, it's YouTube, period. It's the only platform that you can reach everyone. So that's my answer.
I think I'd actually push back on that a little bit, right? So agriculture certainly is a very niche thing, but what they're talking about is doing, Zoom learning sessions are just the new way of saying webinars, and webinars are not new. So we're using a new platform maybe to do them, and we're certainly doing them more frequently, but there are lots of really great ways to promote webinar series to help attract the right type of potential audience. So certainly if you have a good email list, that helps. If you don't have a great email list, is there an association or a professional group in that industry, whether it's agriculture or whatever, that you could partner with, and maybe they get to make an introduction on the webinar, or maybe they get to help moderate part of the panel. So there's some value for them and you sort of co-brand it, but then could you get access to their membership list in exchange? And I think also thinking about what the content marketing play is for it. So whether you're publishing some content on LinkedIn ahead of time or Medium, or if there are industry forums, kind of depending on how niche you're getting, maybe you take some of the themes that will be covered in that learning session or in that Zoom webinar, and do some teaser content ahead of time. Posting it, and then with a link at the end to help drive registrations for the webinar. You could do some, maybe like little mini Q&As or mini video, sampling the type of conversation that people can expect. But I think we should just remember that, yes, we're using a new platform, but the concept at a whole isn't that new, and there are lots of really great best practices out there to help you drive the right type of viewer, and you can get very niche and very targeted to make sure that it's the right person. It's better to have 20 of that like perfectly fine-tuned viewer or participant, as opposed to 300 people who maybe saw you on a broader channel, maybe got picked up on some keywords or something that's actually not the right audience at all. So I would be really thoughtful about how you're focusing on that niche audience.
I really like this theme that we're all discussing on making sure that you're getting to the right people. It's not just about, can we grow our followers by 500 people in the next 6 months? It's really about, who are we trying to reach? Who is that particular target and how are we reaching them? And actually that leads into this next question that, Matt, I want you to answer, since you're the ABM guru over here. The next question is from Mike. It says, we have a B2B tech company that focuses on a total market of about 200 companies, which is small. 10 to 15 that really matter the most. How can their marketing strategy differ from other companies that may have a much larger market? So that's why I mentioned ABM. Yeah. So I'm going to serve it straight up to you.
No, that's good. That's perfect, and it speaks to what we were just talking about, the importance of knowing your customer. And I think, right, like you said, you have 10 to 15 that are the best quality. And so at T-Pro, what we did, so this is a great example of how we did it, was we created an ABM strategy that said, we are going to focus on, and it was 25 target customers, and we built, everything was personalized. And so the landing pages were personalized, the content recommendations, because we did all the research. We knew all the key stakeholders, everyone that was going to be part of the buying committee. We targeted marketing these campaigns using their own marketing against them. So for example, Sunmade had this new campaign, the first campaign they launched in 10 years. And it was grow young was their idea, that raisins help you grow young because they're healthy and all these. And so we just do it right back at them. Grow young, you can't grow young without putting the right data in. And we were a data analytics company. And we sent them money trees. We did all kinds of creative things. But it was really focused. But for those other, I don't know, in our case, thousands of CPG companies, we ran a demand generation program in the background that was aligned with the buyer's journey, that had certain touch points that we were trying to see if we could get somebody to rise close enough with their buyer intent by, attending a webinar or, doing all those things that we behavior-wise want them to do, and then switch over to that ABM. So it really is devote the energy and to the people that are most likely to drive your business, and then shift it. Don't ignore the rest of them, but have a more automated sense of, and it starts with what Heather started all at the beginning of this conversation, was you have to know your buyer's journey. If you don't know that, especially in the B2B sense, you fracture that experience. So you're putting content in front of someone who isn't ready for it. And so to do that, and I go like what Manny said at the beginning of our last question, you have to know the channels where they're sitting. You can't expect everyone to come to a webinar just because they follow you. You have, I posted it on LinkedIn, no one came. Well, that's not where your audience might be. And so all of those things feed in. It's where, those 10 to 15 customers, where are they hanging out? Who are they talking to? How can you get there?
I think that's a very excellent answer. And actually diving into one of the things you mentioned was understanding that buyer's journey. For entrepreneurs that are also their own marketing departments, Heather, can you weigh in on how they can go about doing that? How do they start doing that? Creating a buyer's journey. Oh, you're on mute.
I think you have to start by talking to your customers, especially if you're early stage. You just have to ask. And that's where, whether it's putting together some sort of formal or informal advisory board, or just picking up the phone sometimes and calling, or doing email surveys. I think it's really important to do that research so that you can really make sure that you're understanding who they are, what are the pain points, how do they solve them, anytime we're getting ready to do any kind of strategy or messaging framework or anything like that, we always want to do stakeholder interviews. It's also really important to hear how they talk about it. So you, as the founder, might think you understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve, but you're so close to it that sometimes how you talk about it is very different than how they talk about it. And so taking the time to have those conversations, understand the words and phrases that they are using, and how do you take those and infuse them into your own marketing, your own messaging, I think is really valuable. But ask, I think is probably the best way. The other thing, looking at on-site behavior, I think is helpful too. Like when you're looking at the website, where are they coming into the website? Where are they starting? Where are they then going on the website? Where are they dropping off? So it'll help you probably learn a little bit about the journey that they're on as a customer, and then also can help you understand where do you need a stronger call to action or a stronger conversion opportunity on your website. So I think you get kind of multiple wins out of that.
I agree 100%. I'm a huge fan of building personas and doing customer interviews. So I thank you for that. Anything to add, Manny? Oh, you just.
It's not too loud because there's construction going on outside. Yeah, no, I mean, I think at the end of the day, word of mouth is the best thing ever. Anything outside of that is really hard. So like in investment, that's why, the friends and family round always kind of comes first, where they say, hey, raise this much before we could get in, people want to know. So I think how you go about creating that, like Heather said, I do think a lot of, entrepreneurs, especially if you're your own marketing person, you probably, there's a tendency to overcomplicate, the process and the journey. So picking up the phone call, to someone that that would use the product and getting them using it and then getting advice for them and then making it better and then doing that 10 times. And then, and then if they like it, they're probably going to tell someone. So 10 could turn to 20 and then 20 could turn to, so I think simplifying, your first customer journey like that. And then at the end of the day, again, they have to like it. If you're building a product, it's not going to work unless people like it. So sometimes we really just have to focus on the product, and that will naturally grow.
I think that piece is really important. I think a lot of time, and those of you who work in marketing, I'm sure understand this, that oftentimes it's like, well, if the product isn't taking off, clearly it's marketing's fault. When in reality, maybe there's just not a product market fit, or maybe there's something about the product that isn't quite actually meeting the need. So really making sure you've nailed that product market fit. And certainly communication can help you figure out if you have that product market fit. But just remember that marketing isn't like a holy grail. It's not going to solve all of your problems. The other thing I would say, we're talking a lot about like entrepreneurs doing their own marketing. And I know that when you're early stage, you have to do that. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs try to hold on to that piece a little bit too long. You have to be willing to invest in marketing. We hear a lot about like the sort of DTC brands, I think these days are sort of like glamorized, and Casper and House and whoever, and how awesome their marketing is. Well, that's because they invested in it. They didn't try and do it on a shoestring budget. They knew that for user acquisition, marketing was going to be really important. And so they had to be willing to invest in it. And I think that for entrepreneurs, especially, social media sometimes sort of glamorizes marketing, and we see these like social media people who have hundreds of thousands of followers and it looks so fun and they make it sound so easy. The reality is it's not easy. That's why there are people who do this as a career and who specialize in it. And you have to, as an entrepreneur, I think about where's your time? Where do you create the highest value? I think about that even in my own company. Where is my time best spent versus the people who work for me? Or is there a service that I can outsource? And I think as the entrepreneur, you have to understand, where is your time best spent? Is it best spent spinning your wheels trying to figure out how to make a marketing campaign work? Or is your time better spent figuring out how to fix that product market fit, or how to build those relationships with investors? So when you go get ready to build that next round, they already know who you are and they want to talk to you. But I think a lot of times there's this idea of like, well, I don't want to pay for that, so I'm just going to keep doing it. But think of how much time of value, if it's your time, think of how much time you're losing. So there's sort of that opportunity cost that we have to think about too. So I get that entrepreneurs want to do it a lot of times at the beginning, but I think it's also something that if you invest a little bit in it, you'll get so much more payoff than if you just keep trying to spin your own wheels.
Amen. I'm gonna second that. And someone said it earlier, of sometimes you're a little bit too close and that can cloud your judgment, especially when you're the entrepreneur. So bringing in a third party, it really helps mitigate that. All right, Manny, we got another question that I'm going to pick on you to answer. This came through the Q&A. So any thoughts on leveraging digital subscription or membership services such as Patreon or Subscribestar alongside a video platform like YouTube or Storyfire?
And so that's basically, the question is like selling a subscription for you. Yeah, I think everyone should sell a subscription. I also think everyone should probably roll out some type of course in class or whatever, like right now, for sure. I think low cost subscription is ideal because it's easy to prove value to that. And then you could also, you're gonna get a buy-in, a loyal base, and then now when you have other services, you could roll out to them. And just because you have a low cost subscription doesn't mean you can't offer anything else that's substantially, higher. So yeah, I definitely think everyone should do that because we're in a very interesting time, and whatever you could do to make, money while you sleep, essentially, I would recommend that.
Yeah, great. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I would just be careful. The amount of time that it takes to put content together for those things is pretty significant, especially if you're charging for it. There's an expectation of quality. So trying to understand, is it worth your time to invest in that type of content for a low budget subscription thing? Or is your time better spent figuring out how do you fix that product market fit for that higher dollar product? How do you build the pipeline so that you can land the bigger deal, not the lower deal? Sometimes it's easier to do the lower piece, but that's not where the big long-term payoff necessarily is gonna be. So it's just thinking about where is your time best spent. It goes back to what I was saying before. Where are you creating the most value for the company?
Yeah, and I think to add to that, you have to think about how you're going to convert those people, right? It's like, how are you going to convert those people who attend your class to then, use your product if that's what the goal is. And it all goes back to the goal. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And so it's the same thing. Like if you did a free class, you would want to know how you're going to convert those people to become customers. You don't want them to keep taking your class. Like you want them to become your customers and sign up and be repeatable and all that.
Yeah. Great. I think the thought leadership direction of those subscription choices is really the important piece of it. You're showing that you're the expert in this area. Does it have to be through a subscription? No, but being the go-to for that is really important. I do think that everyone needs to have a thought leadership strategy. Okay, so we got a really great question in the chat. Social media is great for connecting with individuals. Do you consider this channel optimal for B2B as well? This is my favorite because it depends. Or are there better approaches?
I won't even say it depends. I say absolutely. So I think it really is valuable. I think how you use it in a B2B environment is very different than if you're, trying to sell, Donato's and Wolfsburg are clients of ours, right? So if you're trying to sell pizza and beer, that's different than if you're trying to sell a healthcare product, right? But it absolutely is really important. And keep in mind, you can still connect with individuals. They just might be different individuals. So we've had a lot of clients who are using social media to stay connected to the media who are covering their industry so that then when they have a story they want to pitch, that's not the first time the media has heard of them or of their company. So using your social media to nurture your media relationships is really helpful, but also thinking about who are the gatekeepers in your space? Who are the people who are planning the conferences, putting the webinars together, and how can you use social media to nurture those relationships so that when they're planning a webinar and they're gonna have 1,000 people from their industry association participating, that they know you and they have the familiarity and that relationship with you and they ask you to be on that webinar, for example. But I also think it can be very helpful. We do a lot of social listening for clients. So even if maybe you're not actively engaging every day in social content, the amount of information that we can learn from what people are saying is unbelievable. We use a tool called BrandWatch. We can pull 5 years worth of social data from there. And we're doing all kinds of customer insights and analysis and helping clients think about even the content strategies and how that ties to sales cycles based on when people start talking about topics versus when that conversation reaches its peak. So absolutely, it's super valuable for B2B. Just how you use it is certainly different. But there's a huge opportunity for B2B to leverage social.
And just to add to that, when we're thinking B2B versus B2C, the B is still people. You're still talking to humans with human emotions that react like humans. So keep that in mind when you're talking, I'm a B2B. Yes, you are, but you're still selling to humans.
Well, and so like I started Gebben 10 years ago. So obviously the world was very different 10 years ago. But even when I first started, 75% of all of my new business came from relationships that began online. And most of that actually came back from Twitter. Even today, our largest client is a relationship because I got to know the director of marketing through Twitter. So you can use it very effectively. You just have to be, it's different than pizza and beer, but it's very effective.
Amen. Amen. Manny, it looks like you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, no, I was just adding in that I've never looked at it too separately, right? I've always looked at social media. I never even thought about it as B2B or B2C, because if I do think about it as B2C, am I going to follow the people that are private and then send them a message after? To me, that's kind of creepy if you're a brand doing that. So yeah, I wouldn't even, and this might be an example of an entrepreneur working in marketing, maybe too much focus on the marketing. I think you just got to do it, get it out. At the end of the day, unfortunately, it's a numbers game too. So let's see what happens.
All right, we are about the end of our time. So is there anything else this group wanted to add and make sure that we covered as we say thank you to everyone for joining us today?
I think the one thing I would add is if you're thinking about marketing, start sooner than you think. We get calls all the time from startups who say like, hey, next week we're getting ready to launch this product. Can you help us? And we can, thankfully we can move really quick and we can help you a little. But if we had even just a couple more weeks to plan, we would have been able to help you so much more. So don't try to throw it together the week of the announcement. Whether you're doing it solo or you're going to bring in an outside partner, make sure you're allocating enough time to really do it the right way. If you're going to invest in it, make sure you're going to get the full value of that investment, and time has to be a part of that.
I would add to that the importance of consistency. And I think the start and stop of marketing is so hard on the audience. They don't know what to expect. You're not helping them buy better or have better experience. And ultimately that's what you're trying to help your sales team sell better and your buyers buy easier and know who you are. And so the start and stop this, we're going to create a blog and we post once and then we never post again. The experience is just, so making sure you have the resources and the direction and the goals to be able to do it consistently.
Yeah, no, thank you again. Appreciate everyone. Hoping everyone has a great day. And I agree too. I think if you have a business, marketing, sales, it's intercorrelated. So, get as many examples, feedback, pitches, and pick, and then decide and go. And then it's just a cycle from there. So I definitely agree.
Great. Well, I came into this seeding a lot of questions, but I didn't have to use any of them because we had such an amazing audience with some fabulous questions. As I said, we recorded this and we will send out the link after this event. Thank you to our panelists who took the time today to answer our questions, and we really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us today, and look for our next community Q&A next month. So thank you all. Round of applause.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, guys.
Take care.